Here's a small segment from the Pre-Patch Podcast. Enjoy.
Another company that's kind of just not doing well in the eyes of their fans is good old Bungie.
Bungie.
Bungie,
Got a lot of information on Bungie this week.
actually Sony's Bungie, I guess if we want to if we
Yeah.
want to go after this target. But Sony's Bungie, which I think it's, I don't know. To me, that, like, I'm just to say, I think that's clickbaity. I don't like it. Like, you don't have to say Sony's, but I get Sony owns it or whatever else. But we don't say like Microsoft's Bethesda. We don't say Microsoft's 343. Like, get off of it. Like Bungie.
I've seen people say Xbox is Bethesda.
Yeah,
I think it's fair.
I still think it's bullshit.
And considering everything else that's going on in Sony and PlayStation right now, it is fair to say that this is probably lumped into all of that.
I mean, I have no doubt that Sony had a fucking hand in this.
Yeah, so Sony's Bungie, not clickbait.
I don't know.
They deserve what's getting to them.
Still pretty clickbait, but yeah.
What fucking parallel universe are we in right now where I'm defending I'm defending Sony and Bill is like,
man.
No, you don't.
Bill, are you actually that dude in that mask still?
Are you okay?
Are you a doppelganger?
Yeah.
Are you a doppelganger from a universe where Bill's an Xbox shill instead?
Anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're unfamiliar with what's going on, yes, Sony bought Bungie earlier on in the year. And
it's multiple years.
Been a while.
Oh, is it multiple years? Okay, multiple years. My bad. So
it's definitely Sony's Bungie.
They at the time came out was like, hey, like, we're doubling down, like, they've got the Final Shape DLC coming out, we're like, no layoffs, we're committed to this and blah blah blah. And then they get right on like the tail of the Final Shape, supposed to be like right around the corner, all of a sudden 8% cut, and they're 45% below projections for the year. Now here's what I'll say, right? Corporate America, privately owned or publicly owned company, any of that kind of stuff, right? 45% below, 9 times out of 10 will always lead to some type of cuts. Like, it just, you cannot continue to just hemorrhage money.
I'm honestly surprised it was such a small amount of people that they cut. Honestly, with 45%, that's huge.
Yeah, that is a very large amount, but it's also 45% below projections. So what is that?
True.
Projections aren't necessarily meaning that they are down 45% of year over year.
But when you're talking about a fairly new acquisition, like they're looking at it as like, well, when we talked to you guys and when we obtained you guys, your projections were X amount, and you're 45% under what you projected. Like that's not a good look.
Right. No, absolutely. But it's, I'm just saying, the reason I want to make it very clear about projections is because there are people like, and the whole industry went through this, and why we saw a shit ton of layoffs is because what I call cubicle people are people that look at spreadsheets all day long in a cubicle, never look up to see what's going on around the world. And so when 2020 happened, everything spiked. Why? Well, we're all locked up. 2021, kind of the same thing. Yeah. 2022 happened, and they were like, oh, we're going to continue. So they projected fucking astronomically high. And guess what happened? True. The whole world went back to work and went back out, and everything tanked. So this also could very much be a fault of Sony and or Bungie's, cubicle people or whatever you want to call them, that projected poorly and whatever. But either way, it doesn't change the fact that 8% of their workload of their staff were cut and gone. And with Final Shape being supposed to be around the corner, that got delayed. All of this
Apparently
is kind
Marathon
of like
also got delayed because
Marathon's
of these layoffs.
Yep, Marathon also got delayed. All of these things are just kind of like a little. It's I don't want to doom doom and gloom, but it's hard not to sit here and go, whoa, like,
I don't know. I don't think Destiny is in danger personally, because like that's Sony's huge acquisition, right? So I don't think they're necessarily like on the cutting board. I don't think they're on the chopping block, but
I think Destiny 2 is about to be over, though. I like
it is. The lifespan for Destiny 2 is definitely.
Yeah, even if this wasn't like a thing, I'm pretty sure that Bungie's just reaching the end of the effort that they're wanting to put in. They're either going to
I
do a Destiny
I
3 or move on.
I personally think that Destiny reached an end of what they could do with it about 3 expansions ago, but that's that's just me.
But
Well, the thing that
I'm hopeful that this is all kind of part of the restructuring that seems to be going on at Sony right now. It appears that they're moving more so away from that game as a service model that
which is
and that live service model that Jim Ryan was
Well, we
instating.
talked about it last
but
week. Yeah,
that's
we talked about
Yeah,
it last week. Like Jim Ryan was removed, and then we had that was it the CEO or an exec? It was an exec.
it was an
Um,
exec. Yeah,
that got removed for focusing too much on it. I guess,
she got
well,
which is
scapegoated.
weird.
She
She
honestly
did get
didn't deserve
scapegoated.
to
Yeah,
be let go and blamed the way that she did, but it was all
yeah,
linked to that live service model that Sony's been trying to force.
for
the
sure.
thing is that's crazy though is that you have to remember like they purchased Bungie, yes, for Destiny, but I don't think it was. I think it was because of them like saying, "Hey, live
Oh, it was
service." Like
100%.
it's all
That
like you're the only company that we believe is truly good at doing live service, like live service, everything live service, live service, live service.
Yeah,
So like
Yeah.
it's
Bungie was the expert that they brought in to lead this new era of Sony.
right. So it's just like with them doing this shift, you obviously had your layoffs higher up. You also just cut 8% of like the live service. So obviously they're making a hard transition out of live service. Or I don't want to say out. They're making a hard transition away from sole live service and being a huge focus. But also too, like this cut also negatively affects like how does it affect Horizon Forbidden West MMO, like or Horizon MMO that was supposed to be out? How does this affect? Obviously, this affected the Last of
Last
Us,
of
right?
Us.
Like that
Yeah.
that's gone, right? What about we still have yet to see and have heard from fucking the Suicide Squad. That's not a Sony joint, but it Sony was behind like a lot of it, and it raises questions in my thing of being like, well, is that getting like pushed and can like canned like
Yeah.
what so it's just what does it mean for the greater Sony kind of playbook and all of these games that were live service? As someone that loves live service games, I want them better, and I'm happy that that we are gonna
Yeah.
get a refocus, but
I think
what
Sony
does
just
it
needs
mean?
to go back to doing what they are good at, and that's
Single
good
player
single player
epic.
experiences.
Yeah. The single player
Like,
epic story
I
experience or
understand that they're trying to
single player
branch
epic
out.
story experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to branch out, and I understand that live service game models are fucking money factories if they take off,
True.
but
Yeah.
you
Well,
can't throw a bunch of shit at a wall and
no, but
like
I think that what Sony uh, I see this as a step in the right direction, but I think that the way that Sony's going about it, they are leaping too far. Because I think, and this is Sin putting on my, you had your tinfoil hat. Let me put my tinfoil hat on real quick. This is my theory that they see Microsoft acquiring these live service, all of this stuff, right, and going, oh shit, right? So we go down live service because live service prints money. And then they're like, ah, fuck, live service isn't working. We're going to fucking shift hard direction and go back to what we know. Right. But the problem is that going back to what we have a company that does that. Right. Nintendo does that. Nintendo is known for their single player first party games. And that's what does well. But Nintendo, to the majority of most people, when you're sitting here saying like, when you talk about the big video game companies, I would wager my entire reputation that the first thing that comes out of most people's mouths is Xbox and Sony. And my fear is that if they go hard into this and they don't capitalize on live service in the way that it should be, that they are going to miss a boat. Like they are going to miss out. And this is going to be a detriment to them because by the time that they want to shift back into live service, Microsoft is going to have dominated that space and taken it completely away from them where they have no realm to really play in, right? Like I just we know that Sony is very much like I'm gonna stamp my flag and plant it and I'll die on this sword. And it seems like they don't know how to maybe properly, and maybe this is them properly reeling back some and going, hey, we need to adjust accordingly and maybe do both well instead of, well, obviously what they were doing was not working. But I don't know. That's just me trying to figure out kind of this move, right? Because moving away from live service completely is also not the play. Like, that is not a good idea. Like, if you're talking about from a financial standpoint, it just isn't. You said it. It prints money. It just, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It does print money, but it's also one of those genres that, like, it only prints money if you do it well, and
Of
like
course.
not a lot of people know how to do it well, you know. So it's one of those things where it's like, do you backpedal on it, on that like focus in like Bill said, like do a complete 180 and go back to what you're known for and what you know how to do well, or do you experiment and hope that it fucking works and possibly lose millions, right? Which so Sony doesn't have that kind of money to lose. Sony doesn't have that kind of money to experiment all that much. So,
well, here's my question though. We also have got things like Forspoken. We've got some of the
Not
games.
a Sony game.
Oh, is that well? Okay. What?
It was a Sony exclusive, but it wasn't Sony
That's what
made.
that's what I'm saying. Sony exclusive. I'm just gonna say, I'm saying Sony exclusive, not necessarily Sony made, just Sony exclusive. Because most live service games are not made by like Microsoft or whatever else. These are just, I'm just going to use exclusives. Like, if they are going to go down that route, because Sony is known for having exclusives that are amazing, right? The last few, or let's just say, like, we've got Forspoken, we've had some drops in Sony's field, right? Just like Microsoft has dropped, Redfall, like that was a live service game that fucking was not good, right? Like, it's, if you can't do, you've got to be able to do both of them well, right? Like, I don't know. Maybe this is Sony being like, hey, like, we've dropped some of these that just have not been hits and bangers, and we would just rather get that back to normal. I don't know. Again, just my thoughts on it.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
I'm interested to see what they do.
I think that's kind of the same with me. I'm interested to see what happens with Bungie personally. Because like I said, I don't think that this is going to negatively impact Bungie and Sony's like relationship. I think that Bungie was a huge acquisition for them, and no matter what, they're going to die on that hill and be like, well, Bungie is successful no matter what happens. So, but I am curious to see if Destiny 3 comes out as a live service game. So
it has to. There's no fucking world that game does not come out as live service. If that game comes out, that game does not come out as live service, the Destiny IP is dead in the water. There's no fucking world that comes out. I don't think Sony would even do that. I don't think Bungie would do that. Like, there's no fucking way. That's suicide. That is suicide for that company, 100% for them to do that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm trademarking it right now. We're patenting it right now. Like, I'm just saying, I want to go back to this fucking podcast in however many years, whenever Destiny launches, and I swear to God, if they launch as fucking single player, watch, we're gonna come back.
I don't think they're gonna launch as single player. I just don't know if they will necessarily launch as a games as a service.
What do you launch as then? That's all Destiny is games as a service.
You launch as what Destiny 1 was. Destiny 1 wasn't a games as a service. It was a game that you bought and then you purchased DLCs for.
Destiny 1 was absolutely a games as a service.
Was it? Did it start off that way? I remember it having like a shop and everything.
It still had, it doesn't have a shop, but it was definitely a games as a service as far as, like, it was an online, always on living thing. Like that is games of a, that is
no game. I mean, I guess it really depends on how you label games as a service. I personally label games as a service as a game that's, it's always on, it's constantly evolving, but it's being basically held up and propped up by a cash shop. That's my personal.
Well, there was still a cash shop of sorts in Destiny. One, was it as egregious as what the Eververse is in Destiny 2? No, but it was still there was still a cash shop. There was still a shop within Destiny 1. Like it was still a thing.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I don't know enough about Destiny 1 to realize that or not, but like I don't remember it again, like you said, I don't remember it being as egregious as Destiny 2. So
Hey, I hope you enjoyed the patch notes. And if you want to see more from the Pre-Patch Podcast, don't forget to check us out live every Thursday night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, or at anchor.fm/Pre-Patch Podcast, or wherever podcasts are listened to. Hope to see you there. Much love.